Well, so I think that I'm gonna have to start bringing this every time because this stuff doesn't work most of the time, and so I would prefer to get up and move around, but I mean, I don't want to complain either. So okay, so I'm just I'm gonna start doing this section just by doing problems because it's and there are several of them that are already there, so I'll let you look at those. But here we'll look at one for a few seconds, and we'll notice the behavior he likes to see. So the first thing he does is he does what he's classifying as a free body diagram. He cuts it there, replaces it with his load. Then the next thing he does is he takes this little part here, the ring or whatever this is, and then he's looking at this area. And you could look at that area, but at that point, who cares? You don't really care that much about those areas. And so you'll notice he doesn't really do that. So in the first one, he basically says, hey, wait a minute. These two are the same thing. And then from that, he puts this down here. And then he takes this ring. Next thing he does is he focuses on the ring at B, so to speak. So I don't know if he specifies the ring, calling it the ring or whatever. But these equations here are focused on the connections of all these ropes at that ring. So in other words, your focus really kind of comes around that. Now, that's great until you realize, hey, wait a minute, there are possibly set up where there are two rings. And if there are two rings, then you have two sets of equations. You have sum of the forces in the x and the sum of the forces in the y equals 0 here. But you have a whole nother set. Sum of the forces in the x equals 0. Sum of the forces in the y equals 0 here. And so you have essentially two equations here, two equations here. You got four equations. Well, you got one rope here, one rope here. Now you know the tension in that. He told you, you know the tension in that, and you have this. So you have 4 equations and 3 of them now. So you can solve that. So you'll notice that I don't think he really ever goes more than 2 rings. And we'll solve one of them in a second. I was focused on one. I'll go back and focus on it again as soon as I find it. But you know, you got a whole bunch of these. Here's 2 rings. There's 2. There's 4. I'm sorry, that's 3. 3 rings. So we'll go and look at a bunch of these. Let me find the one I was on and we'll start working it. There it is. So here he has a crate, and what I'll do here, let's just create a new page, and I'll just work it off on this page. That's the wrong spot. There we go. And then I'll just copy the whole thing and drop it on there. And then what I'm going to do, as I do this one, I'm going to introduce you to a particular way to think about this one. But I'm going to first solve it the traditional way, and we're going to look at the equations that we got, and we're going to notice something interesting about them. So here we go. We got this. Okay, he says this is 500 pounds. Okay, so yeah, I guess I could break this off. I mean, here, I'll just become like what he is for a short period. Okay, so he tells us that's 550. So I'm pretty much sure that the tension in this rope is going to be 550. If you want to see that, do the sum of the forces in the y. What he generally does is he'll put an arrow here to designate what's a positive direction. And then he'll say, now technically I'm not supposed to know that yet. So then he'll say T, because that's going in the positive direction. And then minus 550, because that's going in the negative direction. This is designated positive, that's the opposite direction. And that's equal to 0. So you end up with the tension's equal to 550. Now, you turn around and you focus on the ring here. Now this one, he pretty much looks like a ring to me. They don't have to be. It'd just be 3 ropes tied in a knot together. But I think he likes this, so we're just going to stick with that. If I just follow his thing, let's see, if I clip it above here and say clip it above there, then I got the ring. I can do the free body diagram off of that. So I'll just kind of drop it maybe right there. And then I need to shrink out. So as it turns out, this looks like I'm copying it from right here. And then here, since, okay, now let me just double check. Some books use a F everywhere. Some books use a T. Okay, he's using the T. Tension, AC. Okay, I just wanted to make sure. So all of his notation here is T. Oh, that's annoying because now it's F right here. Yeah. So he doesn't really, and then he's got his T back here. I don't know. I'll just use T, you know. So I'm going to call this tension towards C. I'm going to use that and that. And I'm going to call this one tension towards B. I don't know. And then I didn't get to copy the 3, 4, so I'm going to copy that or put it down here. 4, 3, and 5. And so now what I've got to do is I got to sit here and break these into X and Y coordinates. So technically I've got to put this, which is TB, and that's cosine 30. And then this one will be TB sine of 30. And that'll go together to form this. And then maybe I've got this one, which will be, say, right here. And this will be 4/5 of TC. And this one right here is going to be 3/5 of TC. The reason that is you take this ratio to that ratio is the same as this ratio to that ratio. And so I got all my components of everything I need. So what I'm going to do is sum the forces in the X first. I mean, generally speaking, that's what you do first. I mean, you don't have to. Here. So there's no sum of the force in the X equals 0. It's equal to nothing. I've got this component. That'll go right here. It's going in the positive direction. This vector is going in that direction. So we're all good there. And then I got this one, which goes in the negative direction, minus TC cosine of 30. And so I've got an equation here. Now, most people put the 0 on the right-hand side, but that's an equation. It's two unknowns, one equation. So I need something else. So I need the F, sum of the forces in the X, in the Y equals 0. So I've decided that's going to be positive, and generally I do that. I always make this positive and this positive. Just because generally I'm so used to a coordinate system looking like this, that to me that makes sense, So I really don't think too much about that. I just go with it. Yeah. Say it again. Oh, yeah. You're right. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, interrupt me as soon as I. One of the problems of lecturing this way, I tend to become very sleepy because I'm sitting in my seat, honestly, and so there are times that things just slip. So that's just life, You're experiencing that. How often do you sit and listen to a lecture and you're not moving around? Or how often do you sit at your desk? You're sitting at your desk. Now, I have a desk where I bought one of those things that are standing, and I can make it go up. And what's surprising to me is just standing and moving around, I accomplish probably 20 or 30% more work. So it's really weird. So the fact that we sit down all the time is really kind of dumb. Now, if I'm sitting down watching the game like I did last night, that's great. But you're supposed to do that watching a game. So yeah, please, if I start doing stupid stuff, don't sit there and think that, oh, I don't understand. You think, oh, he's falling asleep. Waking up. Okay, so I'll take my Y. I don't know why I'm going to do that one first, but I'm going to do that one first. And then what I'm going to do, I don't know. I'll take this purple one second. I'll take the purple one. It's going up, so it's PB sine of 30. And then the green one here, it's going up, and it's 3/5 of TC. And I think I've got them together. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to solve this in a really interesting way. And the reason I'm doing this, and I know everyone has an opinion about math, what they like and what they don't like. But it would be helpful for you in the future to think a little bit, not just here, but in other things, to think a little bit like a matrix. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to form this as a matrix, and then we're going to see something interesting about this. So what I'm going to do, a first step is I'll arrange everything. So I'll take this one, I'll call this equation X and this equation Y. Obviously, because this one's associated with the X coordinate, this one's associated with the Y. So I'll rewrite the X equation as, 4/5. So I'm not really doing anything to this, honestly. Equals 0. So I just put the thing on the right-hand side. Now what I'm going to do for the Y equations, I'm going to match up the values. So in other words, I'm lining up. What I'm going to do is try to line up these. And you'll see why in a minute. So I'm lining these up. And for that matter, I might as well do that right here. So I'm lining these up. So if I line these up, I get 3/5. And then I get TB sine of 30. And I get a plus here. And I get equals to, and I'm going to take the 550 and move it to the other side. And so if you look at it, you'll notice I've lined up my TCs and I've lined up my TBs. So I got two equations, an X and a Y. So now I'm going to do something bizarre, which shouldn't be that bizarre for you. I'm going to line this up. I'm going to line the TC up, and I'm going to line the TB up, and I'm going to put the coefficients. Hang on. TC, TB. Notice the sequence. I got the TC first and the TB second. So I'll take the coefficients off of here. 4/5 and 3/5. And then minus cosine of 30 and then a sine of 30. And I'm spending a little extra time in the setup so that you can remember, so that it'll maybe jog your memory about setting up a matrix. So if that makes sense to you, we'll start looking at this, and we'll do this problem, and then we'll do another problem, and maybe instead of doing the other, I'm going to break apart the ring, and we're going to look at the ring. So if we do this, I hope I got this right. So the TC times this, in addition to adding the TB times this, would give me that. And that's what this first equation is. So if you look at it, this one, the first one, this is essentially equation X, and equation Y is the second one. So let me just go ahead and solve this. I'll leave it low so I can grab my octave out of here. And I'll do the left-hand side, call it a matrix K. It's equal to 4/5 minus cosine degree of 30. And then I'll hit the semicolon to give me a new row. 3/5 and sine of degree 30. And you get a, oops, I didn't hit the right bracket. So you get a matrix out of that. Let me go up one and put the right bracket on. So there's my matrix, 2 by 2. It's a pretty boring matrix. Nothing exciting about it. I'm going to do the right-hand side, so I'll just call it RHS. And it has a 0, and then it has a 550. And so now I'm going to do an inverting the K, and times the right-hand side. Now, there's another way you can do this too. You can do the K and then a backwards divide by the right-hand side. It just depends on which one you're more comfortable with. I think, don't quote me, I think in the old days, this would invert that matrix. So if you had a fairly large K, this one would take a little bit longer than this one, because this uses a direct Gauss elimination. It recognizes, okay, up here it says I've got to take the inverse, and once I do that, then I'm going to multiply that times the right-hand side. Here it says, okay, this guy wants me to take K and the right-hand side and solve the matrix. So it's a few less computational steps. For a 2 by 2, doesn't matter. For a 1,000 by 1,000, I think you would find a large difference in the computation speed. So what it gets, 517.91, and then I get 478, 478.846. So you line these up, and that's going to be your answer. So that first one, whatever you put here is going to be coming out first. Whatever you put here is going to be coming out second. So those are the sequences. And so those are the two answers you get. Now, I guess I could, just out of an abundance of caution, I can go in here and look at the appendix, which I think I may have already had. Yeah, I had it up already. And now, oh no, what was the problem number? I guess, oh, F 3.1. So that will appear to be in a different location, F 3.1. Okay, he's got R's and he's got F. There's the R's. Am I still at R or am I F? What? Okay, this is something. This is preliminary problem. Where's the fundamental? Oh, wait, there's the F. 3.1? No. Wait. Okay. So there's this 3. So AC is 518. And so I just called it tension C, I think. My tension C, okay, he had 518, he truncated it, and the other's got to be 578. Okay, so he chopped those digits off. Here he rounded up, so we're the same thing. But now I want to, like, bring your attention to something that is just kind of haphazardly pointed to in the book, but if you really, really look at what's happening, you'll realize that this always happens. If you begin to think this way, you can look at the picture and immediately write down the matrix. And so let's spend our time for a minute to try to think of it. So in other words, we're going to work the problem in a completely different way. And I'm just going to copy the thing. But mentally, it may not appear to be that different. So here's what I'm going to do. So I'm focused in on this ring, right? So what I'm going to do, and since we've done this before, oh wait, asterisk, is that it? Nope. Wait a minute. I want to go here and make a normal vector this way, or a unit vector towards C. I want to make a unit vector towards D. And I want to make a unit vector towards B. So we're so used to thinking of these unit vectors that let's just focus on that for a moment. So let's do the easiest one. Okay, now I'm going to set my coordinate system up like this because that was the coordinate system I was using before. So my unit vector to D, that's the easiest one. It's minus J. Why did I write a K? So it just points straight down in the opposite direction here. And that's it. That's a simple. Now the unit vector towards C, that's pretty cool because I got 4/5 pointing to the right, or 4/5 I, and then I get 3/5 pointing up. 3/5 pointing up. And now I'm going to do the unit vector for B. Now, this one has a component pointing backwards, so it's minus cosine of 30 I, because it points to the left, and it points up sine of 30 J. So now, I got 3 unit vectors. Now, before, I called the force in the tension here as tension in C. But now I want to call it a vector. And it's basically the TC times UC. Now, I know these are the same symbols, but this one is a scalar, and this is the vector. So if you took this picture again, in other words, if I took that picture, okay, I want to take that picture. to do a copy. I want to go somewhere else and drop it. So if I do this picture, okay, the picture says I have a tension in C, I have a tension in B, and I have a tension in D. Now, if I do that in this way, the way we've talked about before, these should all be vectors. Well, what are they? They're nothing more than the tension in C times the unit vector going towards C. This is nothing more than the tension in D times the unit vector towards D. And this is nothing more than the tension in B times the unit vector towards B. Now, if you look back at his original thing, he was saying sum of all the forces as a vector is equal to 0. That's what he originally introduced us to. So if you have two of these, it's basically sum of the forces in the x, sum of the forces in the y equals to 0 and 0. Let's see if we can put these all together in one just one swoop. What I'll do is I'll say TD UD. I'll take this one, then I'll add that one, and then I'll add this one, and I'll just put them down. Plus TC UC plus TB UB. Does that all make sense so far? I'm just writing. So if there were more of them, you'd write TE, UE, on and on, as many as you got. Usually in 2D, you're not going to have more than 3. And we'll explain why later. But we have a special one here. And the special one is this one. Oops, it didn't take it. This is the special one. The reason it's special is he told us that's 550. Okay, so let's go ahead and fill that out. Now, the way I've got it represented here is it's pulling, my vector is going away from ring A and it's going down. And it just so happens, luckily, that tension in D is equal to 550. But if you want to write it as a vector, it looks like this. Because a minute ago, in the picture up here, I recognize that that is just that. And I failed to put the minus sign. So if you forgive me for a minute, I'm going to zoom back in and move it to the right, if that's okay with you. And I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to put the minus sign right here. And why? Because the minus sign actually gets attached to that. And this is just the magnitude for 550. Is it 550? Yeah, it's 550. Now, if I look at this equation then, here's what I see. I'm going to write this in a standard form. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this vector and write it. So I'm going to take out the 550, and I'm going to put it in as a vector. It's going to be 0 in the x and minus 1 here. Now, what this is implying is 550 times 0 in the I minus 550, or actually minus 1 in the j. So in other words, the first one is the I, the second one is the j. But now let's look at but before I put them together, we'll see how we put them together. So now I've got TC, and I need to put UC there. That's 4/5 and 3/5. Okay, so bear with me here. 4/5 and 3/5. And then I've got a TB, and if you'll bear with me, I can move up here, and it's minus cosine and plus sine. Minus cosine 30? No. Was it 30? Yeah. And then sine of 30. Now, I'll go ahead and express this all the way out, and then we're going to look at the structure of the matrix here as it relates to these base vectors here, or the unit vectors. The key is we're going to observe what this looks like, and then we're going to observe something interesting about the matrix itself. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that matrix, because that's what we're going to look at. I'm going to copy that matrix. I'm going to put it right here, even though it's there already. And then I'm going to shrink it down a little bit and move it over. And I'm going to stare at something first. And maybe I'll bring this up first, and then we'll go back and say, why did this happen? Right now, I don't care about the answer because we know we got the right answer. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare something here. Let's see if I can, how can I move this closer to that? So I'll move this, I'll get rid of that. And I'm going to move these closer up here. And then I'm going to move them side by side, maybe. Here's what I'll do. I'll move this one over to the side here. And I'll move this one over to the side here and say they're all independent units, so to speak. So in other words, here, okay, wait a minute. So when we stare at these things, we're not saying they are added together. I'm just going to say I got one right here, I got one right here, and I got one right here. I didn't line them up very good. Because one of the things you see, if here, I'll tell you what, let me shift them around if you don't mind. I'm going to shift them in the order that I'd like to have them be observed at. I'm going to shift this one to over here. I'm going to shift this one to right here. Now, here's what I want you to notice. Notice this is the same thing. And notice this is the same thing. And then notice this is the same thing. So how does this play out? What it plays out as is this. And now that you've noticed it, if you don't mind, I'll take the red off of it. And then I'll really kind of describe what this is. This column is associated with TC, so it is the base vector for the UC. This one is the base vector UB. And you know what? If I rewrote this one like this, here, let me rewrite it. That's the number 1. Here's the 550 minus 1. This is the base vector UD. And so the columns, they're listed as the base vector. If you list them X and then Y equation, then in fact, whatever goes with the I equation goes here, and whatever goes with the J equation goes right there. It always, 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 always works that way. So you got to make sure that this column is associated with the first row here. So in other words, UC times TC, UB times TB, and if you take care of those few things, just the order of the notation, you can just look at a problem and work it. Now, we got enough time to do that. Let's just pick another problem, and we'll work one just from that observation. Is this the right place? I don't think that's where I was, but let me just find a problem at random. I don't want to do one with a spring. We'll do one with double rings later, but let's try to find one with a single ring. I guess I could do one. Come on. There's got to be one in here. Well, here we go. Let's do this one. So this is what I'm going to do. Okay. I'm going to copy this, and we're going to work it off of this base vector approach. I think I'm clipping part of the thing, but it's okay. I keep saying base vector. I want to be saying unit vector. So here's what I'm going to do. First thing, you got to decipher something here. The mass of this is 40 kilograms. So therefore, the tension in that rope, tension in this rope is 40 kilograms, because the weight here, the weight is equal to 40 times 9.81. It's in newtons. So whatever that number is, that's going to be the tension in this line right here. Okay, so I'll figure that out later. Right now, I'm just going to call it TC. I'm sorry, TB. I'm going to call this one TA, and I'm going to call this one TD. Now, if I want to write them in vector form, here's what I've got to do. I got to go in and find my unit vector this way. Here, now that I know what I'm going to call them, let me go stare at these unit vectors. This one's pretty easy. So I'll call this unit vector A, unit vector D, and unit vector B. And that's where my rings are operating off of. So my unit vector A, man, that is just unbelievably easy. Unit vector D, oh man, that is really unbelievably easy. And then unit vector B, the only complication, you get cosine 30I, and then you got sine 30J. Now immediately, I'm going to look at what the unknowns are. This and this. But I'm going to list them all together. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a matrix that has the x equation, sum of the force in the x equation first, sum of the equation, y equation second. I'm going to list it here with UA. Then I'm going to list UD, and then I'm going to list UB. Now, since I've got 3, now remember, what I've got is 2 rows by 3 columns. I've got to multiply that times a 3 by something to get out a, which actually that something is going to be 1, to get out a 2 by 1. So just going to list these in a column. So I'm looking at this one. I'm going to list in the column. Well, 0, minus 1. Okay, this one. Well, that's going to be minus 1, and 0. What does this mean? Uh-oh. Yeah, cosine 30. I got confused right there because I thought it was cosine 3, but no. Then sine of 30. Then what do I put right here? Well, I have to match this to the first entry, tension in A. Then I got to match this one, tension in D, because that's this one. And then the tension in B, and that's because that's that one. What is the N part? Well, the left part, all it's saying is sum of all the forces equal to what? 0. So over here, you got to have a 0 and a 0. Now, the first thing we'll notice is this is claiming I have 2 equations and I have 3 unknowns. But actually I don't, because I actually know the tension in B. So this is the tension in B, and it is, here it is. What is it? 40 times 9.81. 40 times 9.81. 392.4. That's 392.4. Guess what I can do? That is in B. Since I know it, I can just do a strike there. What was it? 290? 392. 392.4. I haven't messed up yet, have I? If I messed up, I probably. So if I do that, let's take a look at this for a second. I can multiply. I'm going to break this matrix into two parts now. I'm going to do 0, -1, 0. And then I'm going to do this, TA and TD. And then I'm going to take this times this and just put it right next to each other. 392.4 times cosine 30 sine 30 equal to 0, 0, and then 9. Where's UB? Okay, UB is right here. It points up and to the right. Okay, so now that I've got this, I can actually take this thing and move it to the other side. And TD, and then I'll get a minus 392.4, and then a cosine of 30 and a sine of 30. And now I can go to MATLAB and just put that in, and that's a pretty, now I'm a little queasy about a sine right here, but I'm going to go ahead and put it in and solve it, and then if I make a mistake on my sine, we'll go back and fix that. So my K matrix is unbelievably simple. 0, -1, -1, 0. My right-hand side is a little bit more complicated. It is 392.4, if I didn't goof up, times cosine. You got to put a D there for degree, 30. And then I got to do a semicolon to move to the next row. Sine degree of 30, close the brackets, and I get that. Now I can do the inverse of K times the right-hand side, and I get an answer of 196. Okay, 196.2, and that's the first entry. So since it's the first entry, it matches up with this, and 339.83, and that's TD. Now, just out of curiosity for myself, first thing I need to know is what problem was that? That's 3,5. Okay, so if I go to 3,5, okay, 3,4, okay, 3, 8, 7, 6, 5. Oh, what the heck is mass is 20 kilograms? What did he? Oh, sorry. Okay. Yeah, that's T. Okay, so here you go. Okay, I got to finish this up. He wanted to know. Okay, go down. He wanted to know the mass here. So what he wants to do is take TB. If you take TB, which was 339.83, 339.83 newtons, you divide that by 9.81, and what you get, I have no earthly idea. That's the wrong place. 339.83 divided by 9.81, 34. I got 34. Am I doing the same problem he's doing? $3.5. Okay, okay. I may have made it more complicated. So here, let's look at, okay. Let's look at the Y equation. Yeah.
Yeah, we got 20 for the answer. It's TA divided by 196.3.
Oh, did I put the wrong one there? Oh. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Why did I do that? I don't know. And I even did, look at what I did right there. Man, I'm really falling asleep. That's not B, that's A. This is T. Maybe I was just writing that. So this is tension A, tension D, tension B. Yeah, okay, yeah. Yeah, you're right. Okay. All right. I don't like, I mean, this makes for a good video, but maybe if I could figure out how to make a stand so I could attach it to my face or something, I could walk around the room and do it. Because, man, I tell you what, I really feel like I need a pillow up here or something if I'm going to lecture this way. And I don't want to sit there and drink a bunch of caffeine because that's no good either. Caffeine is just a fake way of exercising. Exercises your heart, but it doesn't exercise the rest of your body or your brain. So, anyway, so the point is, I hope I didn't mess up the point there, but the point is, if you put this in matrix forms, every single one of these, no matter how you do it, and this works in 3D as well. If you just find the unit vectors that point away from the ring, and you multiply them times a constant, you can form your matrices just like that. And you didn't, so essentially you are summing the forces of the X and the Y and the Z, but you're doing them in a structured way in which the matrix always ends up appearing. So, anyway, I don't know, I guess I could do another one, but I don't know, it's only 5, we got 5 more minutes. Next time what I'll do is I'll do a double ring, and we'll do them. I mean, I hate to just, does that make sense to you, what I'm saying? Because, I mean, you will see, and I'll show you in there, when we get to 3D, he actually kind of writes them in the 3D thing. And what we'll see is, you're summing the forces of the X and the Y and the Z. So what you end up there is you end up with an X equation, a Y equation, and a Z equation. And you'll say UA, UB, UC, and these will be the base vectors. And the first time he alludes to that, you can see it in the structure, but he doesn't really say, oh, did you know you could just take this and write it this way? And so, if I took this, TA, TB, TC, and then over here I'd have another equation because somebody's got to put weight on the thing. And so I'd have to have numbers over here that are going to come from another cable that's pulling on it. So we'll do one that's a double ring, and then we'll go straight into 3D, and I'll show you in the book that one problem he works that you can look at, you can see how he alluded to the fact that it kind of is that way. I guess you'll just see that next time we do. Maybe between classes, I'll run up and down the hall real fast. How many times have you sat in class and you felt like you just falling asleep? Because, I mean, the problem is there's a big difference between sitting here and doing that and walking back and forth. There really is. Oh, yeah, but then this thing, the problem is this goofy thing, I can't, like, about 40 to 50% of the time, this thing won't connect to so I have to bring this. So maybe I should try to figure out how I can just walk around the room. But then if I walk around the room, I can't connect to this. It's just a big pain. I don't know. I think I'm just going to retire. Just be done with it all. It's all, you're strapped. Somebody's strapping me to something. Whether it's a chain around my ankle with a big weight dragging. I mean, that's the way life is anyway. You got to figure out how to exercise your legs enough to pull all the chains that are dragging you. Isn't that a philosophy statement or something? I'm going to stop the stream before I say something I shouldn't.